might work in here? What number might work if I'm looking at that? Negative 12 plus what is going to give us 10 if we are looking, Kylie?
22.
22. Okay. If you didn't get 22, don't worry about it. Don't stress out. We're going to be working with these some. If I'm looking at that next equation, and I take something and subtract 15 and get a negative 25, what number might I be looking at, Gavin?
Negative 10.
I'd be looking at negative 10. Negative 10 minus 15 or plus a negative 15 is going to give us, and again, if you're like, I didn't see that, don't worry about it, okay? We're going to get to problems like these as we look at solving them, negative 10. And again, this one says you start with something and add 14 and get to negative 5. Raise your hand. What number might I be looking at? Kylie? Negative 19. This was like you had to do on the quiz that I handed back that we're going to look at in just a minute. An unknown number plus 8 equals 12. What might that look like, Grace?
N plus 8 equals 12.
There you go. I didn't ask you to solve these. I just wanted you to write that phrase, right? So this is kind of like we had to do in the quiz yesterday. If I'm looking at this one, the difference between 10 and an unknown number n is 3. Well, it is 3. Oh, I like that. That is my equal 3, right? So I know those two. And difference means subtract. And so I should be looking at what as I look at that, Jeff?
10 minus x equals 3.
10 minus x. And then the last one, the sum of 4 and 6. The sum of 4 and 6 and a number is 13. So the sum of 6, of 4, and 6 and a number is 13. What am I looking at?
4 plus 6 plus n equals 13.
Right, 4 plus 6 plus n equals 13, right? The and is telling us where to put all of our addition signs, okay? Yeah.
Could you put parentheses around 4 and 6?
Sure. But you're still adding them and you're not taking it times anything like with the distributive property, different than your worksheet that you have, okay? Now, this was in the C1 notes, right? If you are struggling with those phrases, and especially, you know, we talked about how less than you have to switch the order. Yesterday we said the other word we might want to add to this, what came up on that worksheet was diminished, okay? Diminished means subtraction. You might see other words too as you're doing problems that you come up with and you go, oh, I should have done that for an answer instead. So making sure that you go back, and if you haven't studied this, if you're struggling, go back to C1 and make sure you understand those, okay? Today we are going to be looking at solving our one-step equations, okay? So if you look at this, we're going to solve multi-step problems with rational numbers, means integers, fractions, decimals, and we have to be able to create it, okay? So it says, could you solve this problem using mental math? Some of you were able to do those ones that we had using mental math. You were able to just look at it and kind of go, oh, and some of you still didn't see those numbers that we got for the first 3, okay? Do you think you can just pick a number for x here like we did in those easier ones and just fill something in? Most likely not. So the key thing is this is going to be a multi-step. This is where we're going to be working as we get into the next unit. The one that we're working on this unit, you can see that this is really short notes. We're not doing this very long. We're going to do some work with inequalities. We're going to do one-step equations and then just writing them. And then we're going to take, on this week, we'll have our quiz that's like the worksheet we had yesterday. We'll have that quiz on Thursday of this week. And almost next week, we'll pretty much be almost done with this and taking a test by the end of next week and starting our next one. So, if we take a look at the top of the next page of your notes, okay, it says adding the same number to each side of an equation produces an equivalent equation. So if I start with x minus 3 equals 5, I can add 3 to both sides of the equal sign, and I keep that balanced. Says in algebra, it's written this way. If I subtract x minus a and it equals b, I can, as I look at that equation, I can add the same thing. I can add a to both sides, And my equation, my new equation, when I add a and negative a, those are what kind of numbers? We studied them earlier this year. What property is that? We add a and negative a, we get 0. Those are our opposites, right? Our inverse, when we think of that, our additive inverse, so that's going to give us 0. So we're left with just x equals b plus a. So subtracting the same number from each side of the equation is also produces an equivalent equation. So we're going to be working with equivalent equations. As you take a look at that next one down, in your notes, it says, well, we can use algebra tiles, and I do have algebra tiles, and we will be looking at those some as we are looking at this. And the key thing is, when we do that, is we want to be thinking of this longer x as being our x term, as being what we don't know. Then we're going to have both positive and negative tiles that we're going to look at. And I usually won't give you a scale, but I might ask you to model the equation. So if we are modeling it, we're going to put an x, and then we're going to have 3 1s, and then on the other side, we might think of having an equal, and then we have the 5. If I want to get this tile, this x tile by itself, I'm going to remove 3 tiles from both sides. That is my, if we're thinking of that, subtraction property of equality, because I am subtracting 3, taking away 3 1s on both sides. When I do that, I'm left with x equals 2. So in the model above, removing is the same as, in this case, subtracting, and we're balancing that scale. So, if you turn to the top of the next page of your notes. It says, what does this look like to solve an equation without tiles? So if we are looking at these, you're going to notice that we have either, what 2 operations? Either addition or subtraction. My goal is to get this x by itself. So at the top, please write, goal to get variable by itself. And when you do these problems, you must show me the inverse operation. Now, I had someone say, oh, but I just did that in my head. So, to get the variable by itself, that's our goal. And the key thing is, you must show inverse operation. Must show, my standard for this level is to show the inverse operation when you solve. Because the standard says something like, students can justify how to solve a one-step equation. What they mean by justify is that you can show the inverse operation. Okay? So inverse operation means the opposite of adding 6 to x would be, we are going to subtract 6. And please do it on both sides of the equal sign. Okay? So I'm subtracting off 6. And on this side, when I add 6 and negative 6, I get 0, which leaves me with x equaling 14 minus 6 gives us 8. We're going to go to this equation. It says y minus 2.8. The opposite of subtracting 2.8, you need to show this, plus 2.8. Both sides of the equal sign. We line up those decimal points. 5 plus 2.8 gives us 7.8 equals y. Oh, Mrs. Thompson, I don't need to show you this plus 2.8. You just know I'm doing that in my head. I don't. I can't see in your head. I can't see your thoughts. I need you to write it down. So I need this step in order for you to get points on your homework, in order for you to get points on the quiz. This is the work I'm looking for. 2-point question, 1 point you showed me what you did. Second point, you got the right answer. You probably have. So this is kind of, we're just going to start this so we can get into more complicated ones quick. So we're going to add 4 to both sides, right? Z is going to be equal to 5. I would like you to try and look at these next ones while I put up the answers from yesterday's worksheet. So you have this page in front of you as you are looking at these 12. We're going to put them up in a minute, and I'm going to put up the answers from yesterday's homework. So be in number 4 doing what, Jessica?
Subtracting 14.
Subtract 14. Oh, but that's kind of weird when I have -2 and I have a -14. Remember that when you take -2 minus 14, that's really the same as -2 plus a -14, which is going to give us a -16. X equals -16. Because -2 minus 14, that's the same as going with plus a negative. Okay? As I am taking a look at number 5, Taylor, what's the inverse of adding a -17? So do I want to subtract 17 or add 17 as you look at that? So it's plus a -17. What do I want to do? I want to actually add. So the same, if I have plus a negative, we're going to actually add 17 to both sides, right? P is going to be equal to, 17 plus 32. That's nice. We got 49. In the next one, I'm looking at that one. Sanjay, I have W minus 6. The opposite of subtracting 6 would be to add 6, both sides. I saw some of your papers where you only had the answer here and you put maybe 14, which isn't right, because one's negative and one's positive, right? So we're actually subtracting. Should be -2. If you only have this on your paper and we take a quiz on Friday's quiz and that's all you do and you don't show this, and actually this isn't on this quiz, it'll be on our test, and you don't put this, you've just ended up with a 50%. Show your work. A 50% because you didn't want to take the time to write it down. You do it in your head, whatever you want to tell me, okay? Just know that, okay? If we are looking at number 7, what am I going to do, Emily? Subtract 3.5. We're doing it on both sides of our equal sign, okay? So y is equal to, in this case, 1. If I look at number 8, what should I be doing, Maria? Yep. -6. We're doing it on both sides. I need you to put your device away. Thank you. So if we are doing that, I'm going to have x equals, and as I'm looking at that, what should I have for an answer, Maddie? 6. If I'm looking at this next one, this is a little tricky, so we're going to rewrite the problem because we don't like having a minus and negative. So we're going to rewrite minus and negative changes to just +5 equals a -10. So when I have it written this way, Micah Herbal, what do I need to do to get my answer?
Subtract 5.
I need to subtract 5. And now again, when you subtract this 5 here, you might even want to think of it as plus a -5, right? Subtracting 5 is the same as plus a -5. That is going to give us a -15. Okay? We're going to be talking about doing checks with our homework as we get into especially the more complicated ones. Okay? As you were finishing the last ones, I should see a subtracting of a half to get my answer. This one's a little tricky. We're going to subtract 12, but then it's still not done with the problem. This one you are adding 2.5. Everyone kind of seems to get that one. So the first one, my answer, if I was looking at that, what did we have for an answer, Ben?
Q equals
1.5. If I'm looking at this one, this is where it's tricky. I'm actually going to have a -r equals 3. And what I want you to write in front of that is that means -1 times r equals 3. So I will put this video up and the notes later, Ben, okay, for you to check. Since I have -1 times r, that means like the opposite of r equals -3. If the opposite of r equals -3, what should r be equal to? If the opposite of r equals 3, what should r be? -3. Keeping in mind that this -1, this -1 means to take the opposite, okay? The opposite of r, and it had to equal 3. So if I'm taking the opposite times some number, the opposite of -3 does give us +3, okay? Tomorrow we'll talk about, or on next week on Monday, we'll talk about multiplication and division ones, and that's when we'll kind of get into this more. And this last one, we should have x is equal to 6, okay? Well, now I want to write these verbal models. So when I look at the verbal model of this one, you're going to be asked to do this on the quiz, right? That was one of the questions in your homework, write a verbal model. That means just write it out in words. You are flying a kite. The total length of the kite string is 275 feet. So far, you've cut out 153 feet of string. How much string do you have left? So if we are looking at this, we want to think S is going to represent the string. What do we know in our question? We know the total length of the string, right, is equal to how much the string that's left and what we've let out, right? So when they say a verbal model, all they want you to do is to put it in words, okay? Tell what that story problem means. The algebraic model today on your homework is simply going to ask you, well, what was our total string? The total length of the string was 275. Now we're going to put in what we know. The string that was left, oh, we don't know what that is. That was S. Do we know how much we already let out? Yeah, that was the 153. So if we're going to solve this, what do I have to do to get S by itself? I need to subtract 153 on both sides. So I am simply going to take minus 153. I'm going to always ask that you do your work going down rather than going across. I just think when we get into the harder algebra problems, it's going to make your life much easier if you do it this way than try and go and do your work going across the line horizontally. Do your work vertically. Leave a few lines as you go down and do your homework so that if we are looking at that, what are we looking at for our answer? 275 minus 173 leaves us with 122 for S. They're not hard problems. You know how to do the math. I just need you to show this step, right? So answering the question, you have, if we would answer that, 122 feet of string left, okay? So, as we are looking, your homework tonight is solving these, okay? When you look, the key thing is I need you to show me the inverse operation, okay? So, when you do the problems, you are only doing the worksheet. Yours is, it says 3.1 at the top. Please call this C4. Where that 3.1 is, this is C4. When is C4 due? Not tomorrow.
Monday.
Okay? The reason it's not due tomorrow is that we want to look right now at your quiz that you took yesterday, and we want to look at your and that other review worksheet. Okay? So this is not due tomorrow. So do not think, oh, I have to get this done for tomorrow's class. You do not. That's fine if you want to, but the key thing that I need you to have done is this worksheet right here. And this is what I want to look at questions on, because when you come in tomorrow, I'll answer a few more questions. The quiz looks a lot like this, okay? So today we handed in the one homework. Before we do that, if you are looking at your quiz, when you took this quiz yesterday, we kind of talked about the answers. If you are not sure about why you got some of those wrong, please make sure you check with me. When we talked about the terms, that all of these had two terms and how you wrote these. Some of you did some interesting stuff with this 1/4. You tried to make it a division problem and it wasn't. So just be careful that you're understanding that. And on this worksheet, questions. Kylie. Number 3.
No, I have 3.
Oh, you have 3 questions. Tell me which numbers.
Number 4.
Number
Just the
4.
first 2.
Okay.
First one, number 4. Number 6 and number 9.
Number 4, 6, 9. So, again, this is really from your C2 notes, right? All this vocabulary. What are your terms? Coefficient, constant terms, and like terms. I would make sure tonight you go back, and if you need to make flashcards of that unit, of C1 and C2 to make sure you know the vocabulary. So, when we look at terms, terms are separated by addition and subtraction. That's how they're separated. So if I am writing my terms in number 4, I would have 5n. What would be the next one that I'm going to write down, Andy? What's the next thing? Negative 53. Kylie, what's the next thing I'd write down?
Would it be negative 8?
It would be negative 8n. Jacob would be the next thing. And my last term that I see when I look at this, Whitney, would be what? After the n. 40. Then it says, what are your like terms? So now I'm looking at the ones that have the same variable power. Okay? So I'd start with 5n, and I put all the rest of my n's there. Does that make sense? Okay? It would be negative 8n. You're putting it down exactly as it is here. Then the next one down is coefficient. So again, first, before I answer any more of that one, make sure you go back and look at the C2 notes, okay?
I was just confused when it would be a negative term. And
Yep.
it would be
You always want to think of changing. I would suggest replacing the minuses with plus and negative because the sign goes with the number. Maria.
For the coefficient comes n, would it be 1 or?
This one, the coefficient would be 1, and then you should have the other 2 numbers, okay? Jack.
Would the like terms of 53 and 40 also be like terms?
Those are going to be our constants, the negative 53 and 40. I'm going to put those. They are really like terms, I agree. But in this case, we're going to put those in our constants. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So the constants are going to be our numbers. All right. So when I look at number 6, and I'm simplifying one like this on my quiz, that means negative 8. I'm going to change my subtraction to adding the opposite. Plus negative 3 times 8 plus x minus, I'm going to go plus negative 6x. Now I have some of you that go, you know, I don't need to do that. Gavin, I need you to sit up, please. If I am looking at that, I am going to be distributing here, right? And on the quiz, it'll be like the whole back of the page, just like this. So if there isn't enough room here, I have negative 8 plus, I'm taking negative 3 times 8. Plus, I'm taking negative 3 times x. Plus negative 6x. So if I am writing this out, I want to show, putting maybe my terms exactly in the order. I have negative 8 plus negative 24 plus negative 3x plus negative 6x. So now I'm going to do my like terms like we had to do that first day. Oh, these two look alike. I'm going to add those together. And then I might add my 2 numbers together to get my answer. We'll check it tomorrow in class, okay? Number 9, if I'm looking at the verbal model. So we just did one with verbal model. I kind of need you to do it like that, okay? So you are saving money for a new bowling ball. It costs $55. You've saved $32. How much more do you need to save? Write a verbal model. So what are you trying to do? Well, we're looking at how much you've saved. So maybe the dollars that you've saved, right? And what do we have to do with that amount that you've saved? we're adding to it what? How much you need, the dollars that you need. Does this make sense for the verbal model part? And then you're telling me, and so I want you to try to finish it. What do you think should go over here? So write that from the story problem. And then down here, we already know that we saved $32. So replace the dollars you've saved with the 32. Plus, what do you need? We don't know that, right? That's our unknown. That's your variable. And for need, I don't know. Equals, and again, then fill in the information. Yeah.
Could you also do like the 55 minus 32 equals x?
Well, it depends on what you had up here for your verbal model.
So, like,
You wouldn't have had the same verbal model then,
yeah,
right?
I put, like,
If you have the right verbal model, I would probably let you use that. Okay? Anyone else questions? So those were some of them. If some of you still have more questions on this, I want to make sure this is what you have done for tomorrow. Go back and look at your notes. C1, C2, C3. Yes. Number 5. So number 5 is very similar. I will start number 5, but I won't finish it. So if I look at number 5, I'm going to start with 5x. I'm going to have plus. I'm distributing the 4. I'm taking 4 times x. And then I have this minus, and I'm taking 4 times 5. Now, if you change this to plus and negative 5, this would be plus and negative 5 here. So it just depends which way you did it. Okay? You wouldn't have had to. You could have kept it as just the minus. But then you got to just be careful. And then you're going to add your like terms. Okay? So the quiz looks a lot like this. It's 9 questions. It looks pretty much like this. Make sure tomorrow we'll correct this in class. Okay?
do we need this